grumpy old men. Okay, boomer. Look, man, I just put out the video, Modern Music Sucks. And look, I knew when I put it out, I knew when I put the cover of it and I'm, going like this and I put the title, Modern Music Sucks. I knew that was going to get a huge response. I'm at the point now when I do these videos and once I finish producing it, once I create the thumbnail and all that, I start to go, this one's going to be big. Now, I did not know that the one that I put out before that, the day before, that just said burned out on the title, that would blow up. But you know what? You see trends on YouTube. You see trends of people putting out videos. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And those videos tend to do well, right? And that's the thing, man. Here's the thing. I don't mean any offense. If young people take it offensive that I'm saying that today's music's not any good, I don't know. Prove me otherwise. I haven't seen anything or heard anything. And maybe it's because it's what the industry is promoting. I get that. Maybe that great artist that writes incredible songs, maybe I'm not hearing it because the industry isn't promoting it. But, there was a time there where you could, when I was a kid and I discovered Jimi Hendrix, went back and listened and found Jimi Hendrix. And then I waited for the next guy. Who was going to be the next guy to carry that torch? And Eddie Van Halen comes along, and then all of those 80s shredders, appeared. And here's the thing, man. And I can say this as a player, right? Because I had to literally change the way I played. When the 90s came along, dude, it wasn't cool to do any of the sweep picking that I had learned at GIT. It wasn't cool to do any kind of tapping. It wasn't cool to do any kind of playing histrionics. And so for at least a decade, man, I had to change my playing style. I didn't want to play any of those 80s style sounding techniques, and I had to adapt. As a player, if you want to work, you have to immediately adapt. It can literally be 1 minute you're in the studio and the producer goes, hey man, none of that stuff. None of that stuff. Just give me something simple, raw, make it sound like you're playing in a garage. And look, man, if anybody on my channel has watched my videos, Room 303, the grunge tunes that I've done on there, and it was my, tail end of my time out in LA when we just decided, hey, let's quit trying to find a singer. I'll just do the singing, and we'll write songs as a power trio. And, I knew that music was changing. I couldn't play my Van Halen style licks anymore. And, it's not like I couldn't do that. It was easy to change. And look, a lot of the grunge bands at one time or another had been more glam or more, big 80s rock. And it was a natural progression of music. But think about this, man. Look, I learned how to sweep pick back when that was just starting to become a thing, right? And at one time, I could sweep all over the neck, up and down the neck all day. It was like yawning because I could just, sounding, like a broom sweeping across the guitar neck. But, when those things went out of fashion, right? And people, you have to fall in line, right? Especially I moved to Nashville. And, it took a while before country music changed and my phone started ringing to go out and do that kind of touring. And so I had never gone to Nashville to play country music. I had friends that played R&B and blues and all that kind of stuff. And so I went there to just go do that. Let me just go be a regular Joe. I'm not going to try to go be rock star dude. I just want to play some gigs. Maybe I can break into the studio. Maybe I can, who knows? It was just like LA's dead. It's over. Time to cut the hair, which I didn't do when I first got to Nashville, but it was time to do something different. Hey, maybe I can break into country. Maybe I could get a high-profile road gig. And so, the trends of the music business dictated back then how I played as a player. If I wanted to keep working, I had to ditch the two-handed tapping and the sweeping and the dive bombs and the squeals and all of that stuff. And, as a player, right, adapting your playing, you either adapt to whatever gig you're on or you don't get called again. So it's not so much that you're selling out. You're just trying to keep getting paid, right? You're trying to keep working. Because look, as a musician, that's what you want to do. You want to play your instrument, right? I always wanted to play guitar. That was the one thing that I wanted to do, right? And if I could get paid doing that, get paid doing something that I love, well, that would be certainly better than some of those crappy day gigs that I had for years. I always, there were many times where I worked a real job, because, trying to get your start in the business, man, and trying to get to the point where you get enough gigs on your calendar that you can pay your bills. And it was always a hustle, right? Then when I figured out, hey, man, I can flip gear, I can play gigs, I can do random, demo sessions. I can go play on some jingle and make a few bucks. Whatever would fill the calendar, I would do. But man, as far as music goes, as far as being an old guy now, grumpy old men, here's the thing, man. People will say, oh, today's music, you guys are just lazy. You're not, but nothing is presenting itself where I go, holy crap, these guys are amazing. Yes, there are amazing guitar players now. There are guitar players playing at an extremely high level. And I'm not saying that there's not great players. There are great players now with technique. Look, being able to learn shit on YouTube, we didn't have that option back in the day. We had to just kind of come up with our own way of doing everything. And, there were a lot of learning materials back in the day, namely tabs that were incorrect. And so, even I think the Steve Vai tab, I think it had parts of Eruption played on the G string. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you can confirm that. But, the reality is now people have access to all of this stuff that we didn't have, able to watch any artist. I can literally think of the other day, I saw a video, Uriah Heep. And I was like, you know what? I never had seen Uriah Heep before. I can click on YouTube now and see what Uriah Heep was. I had no idea, heard the name, wasn't aware of what they look like and putting the sound with the visual. But man, I get people that mention this band or that band, and some of them are imitations of bands of the past, and I like Dirty Honey, but they seem to be mining things from the past. Greta Van Fleet, everybody knows, was trying to do the Led Zeppelin thing. I don't know what they're doing these days, but it's not as good to my ears as Led Zeppelin. People a lot of times talk about Ghost, right? And I'm not down with the imagery and dark things that they're putting out there. That's just not my taste in music. not where my headspace wants to be at my age these days, but they may be great. I don't know. My thing is this. You used to be, as a fan of music, be able to turn on pop music and hear great songs. And here's the deal. Pop used to stand for just popular, right? It didn't mean that it was, electronic, overproduced nonsense, like it is now. Back in the day, dude, you'd hear Earth, Wind and Fire on pop. You'd hear Rod Stewart on pop. You'd hear Bob Dylan on pop. You'd hear, Rolling Stones. If they had a song that crossed over, you'd hear them on pop. Hell, if a metal band, had a huge hit with something, that might make it on the pop charts as well as the rock charts. And so it was a much easier to hear things and come out and decide what you liked and what you didn't like. Trying to hunt and peck for bands, dude, ain't nobody got time for that. So if there is cream that needs to rise to the top of the crop, I hope it gets there, right? I don't like having to say that modern music sucks. I don't want to be a grumpy old man, right? Here's the first thing. Every lazy ass kid that comments on a video and says, okay, boomer. I'm not a boomer, right? Stop lumping everybody in with one demographic. It's lazy. It's why I don't even say millennials anymore, because frankly, millennials now are old dudes, almost like me, right? They're probably set in their ways about their 90s, late 90s rock, and the stuff that they were Whitechapel or guys that were into Limp Bizkit and stuff like that. I don't know, man. It's every generation has its thing, man. And look, I know it's a normal thing. You guys that are young and have the music that you're listening to now, one day you're going to look back and you're going to be that old guy. That's the thing about time. Time is the great equalizer. So you are going to find a time in your life when you're going to look at the digital bloops and bleeps that the kids are listening to, possibly the completely AI produced bloops and bleeps that are going to be fed to the masses like a rotten can of SpaghettiOs. And you're going to say, man, this ain't as good as the music that I grew up on. And you know what? You're going to be right. You're going to find, look, man, here's the deal. Of course, my grandparents and stuff would think that their music, from the past, my great-grandparents would think their music is better. They would hate the sound of 50s rock and roll when I was a kid. They didn't particularly like Elvis, the old people, the great-grandparents. But man, look at the chord changes. Look at the musicality back then. You could argue that the orchestrated music of the 30s and 40s and the big band era with their bands reading these long arrangements from Duke Ellington and all these people that, well, guess what? The rock era was probably a huge step down from that. So, man, I am not exclusive in my thoughts. And, somebody said, man, it's just a bunch of old dudes high-fiving each other. Well, man, if we could all, pause time and sort of age together and see, if I were alive in 30 or 40 years, to see the guys that are going, okay, boomer, and saying, man, we've got great music and you just don't know, dude. You just don't know. If I could be around with those guys and have them witness the bloops and bleeps that are coming down the line. And when I say bloops and bleeps, I'm talking about boop, 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 boop. It's literally people are going to march to a computer beat, a computer voice, and all computer music. It's already been a scandal that several YouTube channels have covered about a band. What was it? The Velvet Sundown or something? That somebody put a completely fabricated AI band, posted their album up on Spotify, and and then it took a while for people to figure out this is a completely AI band. So here's the deal, man. While you might not agree with me now, while you might be calling me an old dude now, one day you're going to be in that rocking chair, bro, and you're going to be listening to the garbage that kids are listening to and going, it's not as good as what they had when I was a kid. Because here's the deal, man. We may be devolving as humans, right? Our intelligence, our talent is not viewed as needed by those in control. And what you'll be fed is what they decide to give you. And if it sounds and tastes like a rotten can of Chef Boyardee, then guess what? It surely is.